Looking ahead now to the week to come, the Prime Minister is headed to Mexico City to meet with his Mexican and American counterparts. Canada's ambassador to the U.S., Kirsten Hillman, will be at those meetings, and she's with us now. Hi, Ambassador Hillman. Good to see you.
Hi, Vashi. I'm happy to be on your new show.
Oh, thank you very much, and thanks for making the time. Okay, on the substance of the meeting, Ambassador, and in particular the meeting that will take place, the bilateral meeting between Canada and the U.S., the Prime Minister and the President, what is Canada's primary objective in that meeting?
Well, I mean, I think we have a few objectives. One, the Prime Minister and the President are going to want to talk about the North American environment, the NALS meeting, what they're seeking to achieve there. That's why they're there as the three leaders to talk about our ecosystem in North America, which is good. We're 2 years out after the renegotiation of the NAFTA, and we have record levels of trade in Canada, U.S., and Mexico, which is a very good news. But we have to make sure that we continue to build on that. So there's going to be an important economic conversation there.
Okay, I want to zero in on the economic portion of that agenda, and in particular when you talk about the environment between the U.S. and Canada. And I would like to zero in on the Inflation Reduction Act, which kind of altered that environment to a certain degree, especially when it comes to the subsidies that are basically going to be in place to help out manufacturers of electric vehicle batteries. It's a massive subsidy. I was speaking to somebody in the industry today who described it as a complete game changer. I know that the Prime Minister has talked about remaining competitive. Does that mean Canada is willing to match what the U.S. is doing?
Well, I think that's a question probably for the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister. What I do know, I think there's a few things I would say on that. One is the Inflation Reduction Act and the investments that it's making in green technology are important. And they are similar to investments that we've been making, issues we've been focusing on in Canada for a number of years now. And the government has committed to remaining competitive. Remaining competitive is working. Because last year we had $15 billion worth of investment in Canada in the area of battery technology, electric vehicle manufacturing, and critical mineral exploitation and processing. So we are doing very well in that space. But we can never be complacent.
Respectfully, Ambassador, I do have to challenge some of that answer in this vein. So I understand that there was a substantial amount of investment in those areas in Canada last year, but that was the majority of it prior to the introduction of the IRA, and then now what's coming, the implementation of a lot of these subsidies. Yes, Canada did carve out an exemption for sure. I understand that, and I'm not trying to take away from that. But when it comes to other portions of the subsidy, I mean, all I keep hearing, and not with no disrespect to you, but from other politicians too, is that Canada will remain competitive, but no specifics attached to it. Has the federal government, has the Prime Minister, has the Finance Minister communicated to you that Canada is in any way prepared to match the types of subsidies that the U.S. is putting forth, because they are game changers?
I think what's important is not necessarily doing exactly what the Americans do. They have their own domestic environment, and they have their own ways in which they are attracting investment, their own value proposition, and we have ours. We have been investing in this space for a long time, and we have an ecosystem that is already healthy in this space. The U.S. less so, right? What we need to do is understand how best we can be working together to be doing as much as we can together. In my experience in the Canada-U.S. trade space, which is a space I've occupied for a long time, when the U.S. starts to focus on a particular area of industrial activity and a particular area of economic activity, we necessarily benefit from that because we are so deeply intertwined and we are so deeply in sync in terms of how our economies operate, that some of that benefit will come to Canada. In this situation, I would say even more so for the reasons that I cited, which is the resources, the technology, the workforce, our ability to get workforce when we need it, is a value proposition that we have that sometimes, quite frankly, is better than can be available to investors here in the United States. So yes, this is a big country with a lot of money to invest, and they are doing that, but that's a good thing for the environment. And overall, I think it's going to be a good thing for us as we always work together with the Americans in these emerging areas.
So just before I let you go, Ambassador, just to be clear, though, is the idea that Canada remains competitive just because of the competitive advantages that already exist? Or do you concede that given what the IRA entails, Canada will have to make adjustments? I'm not saying match it subsidy for subsidy, but do more than Canada is doing right now.
I think we have to be aware of what's happening down here, right? And we have to understand its implications for the Canadian economy. And there are people who are experts in analyzing these things and adjusting our policies accordingly. And I know that those are being watched. And there was a fall economic update that started to look at some of these things. And it was the first step in looking at making sure that Canada remains competitive and that our value proposition remains strong. That is one portion of an entire suite of advantages that we have as a country. But of course, responsible policymaking is making sure that we understand what the environment is for Canadians and Canadian investments and maximizing, benefits for us.
Okay, Ambassador, I'll leave it there. Thanks very much for your time.
Okay, thank you. Good to see you.
Up next here on Question Period, we're going to delve a little deeper into that trip next week for the Prime Minister, in particular his meeting with U.S. President Joe Biden. The Scrum will be here, Joyce Napier, Bob Fife, and Rob Benzie.